Isms and phobias, they're the best of friends. Isms and phobias, can we pretend? I'm not like you, you are not like me. Hey, let's go and tell each other to leave it there. Let's get go. Let's start the party and not be all caught up in twisted knickers in the throes of tribal warfare, my friends. Why and wherefore? What's the point of being so intense? Let's just be friends. Feminism, well, sexism, should I say, classism, homophobia, etc. Oh, what a waste of time. Welcome. So, today's podcast is all about animals, hence the song. So it's all about like pets and, hanging out with, no, not really. It's actually about, you may have guessed it, prejudice and that kind of thing. So basically, you may have noticed there's prejudice in the world, which you could define as like an unreasonable bias towards certain people and against other people. So like, racism. So, and these days it's controversial what the definition of that is. We'll get into that, but racism, sexism, classism, which gets a bit obscured these days, interestingly. You don't hear the huge corporations with all their woke ideology talking about classism too much. The 99% versus the 1% kind of got obscured a bit. Don't see that somewhere, very often. Homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, phobia, ism. There's all these things, right? So, now you could go on for hours about this, but I'm going to try and keep it uncharacteristically snappy today. Just some basic things to think about, which I think get obscured. Maybe you're thinking of these things, but I kind of feel like often when these things are talked about, it's kind of like, it's kind of unsatisfying. Like there's all these obvious, to my mind, important aspects to the issue of prejudice, which are not really mentioned and get glossed over, which seems like these things are kind of like you need to be thinking of these things if we're going to make any progress, I think. So anyway, I'm going to offer a bit of food for thought. So I kind of, what can an individual do to alleviate prejudice in the world? Because, if someone's black and so they don't get the job, they give it to some white guy who's not as good. That's clearly, that's not good. Now, in my opinion, not to alienate you right off the bat, but I kind of lean towards a libertarian thing of like, well, that a business should be allowed to do that, actually, even if it's discrimination, because I think they're going to get a bad reputation in that community. The community's going to be like, oh my God, who are these crazy people? And if there's someone who hates white people, I don't want to work for them. I don't want all that bad energy. So if they're like, yeah, I don't want you because you're white, I go, okay, thanks for letting me know in advance. I'm going somewhere else where I'm welcomed, and not going to be energetically poisoned. But but that's not really the main point here. But so I could understand the other side where people say, yeah, no, we need to set rules for discrimination. But even though I personally would think like, well, actually, legally, I think it's their business, so they would have the right to do that. And you might say, no, legally, they should have no right to discriminate. We would both agree, I assume, unless you're racist, that that person is being crazy. Why are you judging that black person when they can do the job better than the other person? Like, it's just the color of their skin or like their particular DNA, It's like someone can be tall or short, like black or white, it doesn't matter, right? As Martin Luther King Jr. said, it's about the content of your character, not the color of your skin. So, that would be obviously absolutely wrong. Or people, attacking people, killing people, stealing from people because they're Jewish or they're, black or Asian or white or whatever. That's terrible, right? Or same thing if it's doing it to a woman, just because she's a woman, or someone just because they're trans, or just because they're gay or bisexual or whatever it is. or their religion, they're Christian, they're Muslim, attacking them. So I think most people would agree with this, at least in the West. Again, I'm not being xenophobic here and being like judging other cultures or something, but it does seem that in many parts of the world, perhaps more traditional cultures, perhaps where there might be more poverty. Again, what's the cause of that? Is it global empire by America? Okay, that's another conversation. But nonetheless, look at many countries. There are these ingrained, like Pakistan or whatever, or like Afghanistan, ways that say women are treated. So in many parts of the world, this whole idea of that prejudice in general is wrong. That's not actually taken for granted everywhere. But probably most people listening to this will agree that, hey, you can't control the color of your skin. You can't control, this, that, and the other. So if you can't control it, it's not your, you shouldn't be judged for that. And that, you should be basically, if you're being a good person, if you're, being a good influence on others, then that's all that matters. And I would agree with that. That would be my point of view. Now, racism, say, for example, some people these days would be defining that as, you can only be racist against people who don't have power. Racism is all about power. So, you can't be racist against white people because they have all the power. You can't be sexist against men because they have the power, which I think is totally crazy. And I think most people think it's totally crazy. And so that's one of the things I want to talk about here is like that really, if you're not balanced with your approach to prejudice, you're going to cause a backlash and it's not going to be pretty. And so it seems there's a lot of people, it's almost like they want a backlash, and maybe deep down they do. Maybe their spiritual evolution is at a certain point where they're actually keen on some conflict, and it's going to make their ego feel big. They're going to go, oh, I'm so right. I'm such a hero. I'm in this struggle, just like America kind of like, might want some enemies. Like, whoops, we're causing all these problems around the world. Whoops, we left weapons here, there, and there. Oh, whoops. Oh no, now we have new enemies. $1 trillion war industry has to keep rolling on. What a shame to our shareholders. So, potentially, I think some people, perhaps unconsciously, are actually seeking conflict by inflaming things. And that's a shame because I think there's so much, like the song, like that wacky song at the beginning, it's just a waste of time, as far as I can see. Like prejudice, like what's the point? You could be doing so many other things with your life. We're not here forever. You really want to be wasting your time judging people irrationally? Now, I say it's irrational. Maybe someone could say, no, it is rational. Our people, we're white people, they're black, they're not our kind, we don't want to mix with them, or whatever. If you want to have a voluntary community where you only have white people or you only have black people, cool. If you want to have your own voluntary community, that's cool. I don't think, that doesn't sound very interesting to me. It sounds like there's a culture of fear there. But if it really is just like, no, that's just like, that's what we want, that's what we like, then I would accept that if it's voluntary and you own your land, you're doing your thing. You don't want to let other people in. You're like, oh, we have this commune of, Asian lesbians. That's us, right? But all right, cool. I'm neither of those, so fair enough. I can do other things. If you don't want me at your party, I don't want to be at your party. Even if you do want me at your party, if I get along with you, I might agree, but otherwise I won't. So that's totally cool. But when we're in a shared space, we're in the street, and you're like, hey, only Asian lesbians allowed, then that could be a problem, right? Or only white people allowed, only black, whatever. So, and society, there's this need for pluralism, meaning an acceptance of many viewpoints and many groups and ways of being. And so I think ultimately, John Stuart Mill in On Liberty, the book which basically ended slavery, I believe, it's a pretty short book, I think, but he gave a big speech to the House of Commons in England, and basically slavery didn't last very much longer after it, I think. But, or maybe was it two separate things? But he talked about basically, in a nutshell, the golden rule. But he just brought it to its logical conclusion, which is you can do anything you want. You have complete freedom to do whatever you want, as long as you don't prevent others from enjoying the same right. So you have your sphere of influence, they have theirs. The overlapping area of the Venn diagram where your spheres meet and overlap, that's where, the law and politics, etc., and discussion on a local level would be discussion, and then politics, like where your representatives are having discussions, and then maybe law, where the long-term accumulations of those discussions, and when things break down, you have conflict, sorting out the overlap. But in general, those overlaps are not very big, so we can sort that out, those blurry areas. But it's pretty simple, Don't hurt other people, and you can do whatever you want. If it's like you want to listen to loud music at 3 a.m. and your neighbors don't want you doing that, then you have to sort that out together. But that's all right. That's not too big a deal. Most things we can get along. And so, if someone's, black and they want to be on the train and you're white and you don't like it, well, sorry, man. Why don't you get a car and go, it's public transport. That's a shared space. So that's it, So that's be how, of course, it's pretty obvious to most people, I guess, but just to lay that out, some basic reasons, if anyone were ever to say, oh, I think we have our right to have our own thing, or these people shouldn't be in our country. Well, I mean, you could feel that way, but the majority of the people probably would say, no, these people are fine in our country. And yeah, so anyway, we'll leave that there. I mean, if like 99% of the people don't want a certain group in the country, say Japan, in general, they're not really keen on immigration. They just want ethnic Japanese. I feel like that's their right. Okay, that's how you want to be. Fair enough. This is your place. This is your country. It's your party. But again, I think a lot of people at a higher level of consciousness would be like, yeah, that's not very attractive. That feels like there's something a bit weird going on there. So I think these things is a natural karma to things, and it kind of works itself out. But so long as we're not restricting other people's freedom, then we have the right to kind of live the way we want within our territory. But your personal territory, even your sphere of influence, your home, who comes to your home, who are you going to invite to your dinner parties? It doesn't need to be a diversity checklist for your dinner parties. But in the shared space of society, then there's a need for mutual respect and tolerance, And when you do that, you get a much more interesting society. So you get a mix of different cultures. And yeah, so, okay. So, so racism, sexism, all these things, homophobia and transphobia or whatever, maybe not the best word, because phobia means fear, but it seems like actually largely it's disgust is the irrelevant emotion. So there's fear, but also disgust. Like, these people seem just like fucked up or weird, There's that kind of visceral sense of like, which is kind of like about cleanliness, I think, ultimately, like the disgust impulse. It's there to kind of help us go, ooh, avoid that. It's like a health thing. And so it's very, very deep. They're very survival oriented. So is fear, I guess. So some people have these feelings, these deep primordial resistances to other groups. And so that can cause conflict where people say, get out of my space. And we can disagree about what our space is. Oh, you're in my country. It's like, I'm not in your country. I'm in the street. Leave me alone. Like, no, you and your people in my, So you can have problems there where people feel like their personal space is being pressed in upon, even if you're actually just in a public area and they don't have a right to tell you where to be. But nonetheless, so what can we do? Because to keep it practical, like what can we do? There is prejudice in the world. We don't want it, right? Most people, let's assume. How can you deal with that? I think the ultimate answer, which doesn't get talked about too much, is be conscious. So, wake up in your own life. So be as conscious as you can be, meaning become aware. Basically, read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle if you want a primer on that. But basically, live in the now, think about the future and the past as you need to for practical purposes, but try to live in the present moment and just go with the flow. Control what you can and guide it in the way that seems best for you. What do you want? make it happen. So long as you're not hurting others and preventing them from having what they want, and sometimes wants collide. So you have to figure out what's more important. Oh, my, girlfriend wants that. I want this. What's fairer? What's the balance? Come to some sort of reasonable compromise, or find some way where you can both be happy, or you and your boss or whatever it is. But in general, right? So live in the moment, do what you want over the things you can control. Things you can't control, just accept them. You can't control it. Don't whack your head against a brick wall. Just go with it. Be with it. Even, because that can be hard sometimes. So it's even a good idea to welcome it. Play little games with your mind. Go, wonderful. I've lost my phone. Amazing. Perfect. This is exactly what I wanted. And that's just a way of it could be easier to welcome something than it is to just accept it. Because if you're accepting, you're like, I don't know if I should be accepting it. But welcoming it's kind of so outrageous that it's kind of like takes your mind by surprise. And you can just go, yeah, wonderful. This is what I wanted, Anyway, this can help you just live in the moment, go with the flow, and you'll notice you have a lot more energy and you're a lot more peaceful because you're not just fighting life the whole time. You go, well, think of it like the universe has the right to do what it wants. I'm not the whole universe. It was here first. It'll be here after me. I'm part of the universe, but, I have to have humility and I've control over what I've control over. The things I don't have control over, I just need to saddle up and deal with it, ride the wave, learn to surf. Oh, I'm unhappy. Oh, I'm getting dunked by the unending rolling wave of creation. So I can keep getting dunked, salt water in the mouth and the nose, and maybe other places, and every moment there's the invitation to just climb back onto the surfboard, and the wave is doing the same thing as before, but by me changing my own position, aligning myself with the wave more, in this metaphor, standing up onto the board, I can have a different sort of experience of that wave, where instead of being crushed, dumped and just, rolled along in suffering, I can still be moved by the wave. I can't get off the wave, but I can be happy and I can even have fun on the wave, right? So be conscious. So this is all kind of like peace, what I'm kind of saying here, but it all involves, it's not just like being in the moment and like, get outside of your mind and just kind of pay attention to your breathing and be in the moment. Paying attention to your breath is a very good way to anchor yourself into the moment, right? And the mind's always thinking about the future and the past. So this is a way to get outside of your mind and stay kind of peaceful and in the moment. But a lot of the challenges that come up, it's not like, think about the future, think about the past. No, it comes in the form of some sort of idea, some sort of thing you have to engage with, like, oh, Susan's wedding. Oh, Margaret's going to be there. Oh, don't know if that thing she said last time, I think she was making fun of me. That's future, but it doesn't come as like future. It comes as some sort of thing. And so building awareness is being able to say like, okay, that's a situation I don't have control over. Also, it's in the future. Okay, is there any practical steps I can take to think about this and have a better present moment when that comes? Yes or no? If there are, okay, then maybe if now's the right time, okay, I can think about it. If I'm doing something, okay, think about it later. And if there's nothing to be thought about, nothing to be done, okay, leave it, let go, forget about it. So you do this, and then something else comes up, and there's these challenges which pull us into a primordial state, a less enlightened state of kind of conflict with the world. Fear, anger, disgust, sadness, where you're kind of cutting yourself off from life and kind of not so happy with life. You're not friends with the universe at the moment in that state, So now we are going to connect this, right, to like prejudice and all this. But basically, this is the ultimate answer, right? It's the deep answer, I think, is just to be more conscious. So you learn to live in the moment, but largely what it's about is understanding. It's like a feeling realization. It's like a state of understanding of who am I? What's going on? What is a good idea? What's not a good idea? What is a thought, some crazy thought that's going to lead me down a dark rabbit hole of suffering? And what is, a healthy thought of like, that's a nice, look, those kids are playing. That's cool. Nice. So some thoughts are fine, but it's just about finding the balance with your own mind. And so you can live in the now, which is the only moment you ever really have, live a happy life, be a happy person, and be a good influence on the world. And when you're in that state and of, you could say like ultimately you could call it enlightenment or awakening, where you kind of realize, oh, I'm part of the universe. When you get into the moment, you start to realize, oh, I'm like one branch on the tree of life. Cool. And so then all these other things come: peace, love, joy. But and this is a very simple version of it, what I'm telling you, right? And I'm not perfect at it, obviously, but I'm a student, an enthusiastic student at times, so in this, when you start to practice, have this spiritual practice of trying to live in the now and do what's right and avoid unnecessary suffering and be wise, be at peace, be a good influence on yourself and on the world, the whole prejudice thing kind of dies away because you start to see yourself in everything. And so I see a black dude walking down the road and I go, oh yeah, that's me living another life. Wow, if I was a black guy, how would my life be different? Or how is my life different over there as I am living life through that person, and they're living life through me. Like we're all, as the one actor, it's the universe, and then we're all just the different roles that the actor is playing, That's one way you look at it. You might look at that as literal or as like a metaphor, whatever floats your boat, and there's this sense of love and, or you could, that seems too wishy-washy, a sense of, mutual respect, a sense of intimacy, a sense of camaraderie, a sense of brotherhood and sisterhood, a sense of team spirit. And there's no place for prejudice on a team, on a real team. It's just natural, like you're all working together. And I think that is the thing. We're all trying to live our best life, to be as happy as we can. And the truth is, the best way to be selfish is to be selfless. The best way to be happy is to make everyone happy. Starting with yourself, but whenever there's a choice between making me really, really happy and someone else terrible, or me pretty damn happy and someone else pretty damn happy too, okay, lean towards what's good for both of us, So just keeping an eye on others and their welfare, And so this is basically, I think, as far as I can see, the solution to all the prejudice is just try to be a better person, work on yourself. So it doesn't come from changing the outside world, it comes from changing the inside world. And the world changes from within. You could think of that personally. My world changes from within Jamie. Your world changes from within Tony. I'm talking to Tony specifically here. Or Carl, within Carl, right? His world changes within him, right? Or whatever. Cheers for putting stickers on stuff, Carl. Which allegedly you're doing. So yeah, but then also at large, the universe is changing from within the universe. But and so how else could it happen but change from within? You try to change other people, usually they just stonewall you, or you get a backlash. They go, don't tell me what to do, and then they might go, man, those vegans are so annoying trying to tell me how to eat. Oh, those feminists are so annoying trying to tell me that I'm bad. I might go, yeah, stupid women. It kind of like, if you're not careful, it can lead people to kind of solidify with the opposing camp of like, oh yeah, maybe men are, I got to stick with men, people who understand me and don't make me feel like I'm a terrible person, because no one wants to feel like that. So, yeah, in a nutshell, I would say spiritual progress, i.e. self-development, trying to be your best self. That is ultimately the way to deal with everything, including prejudice. Now, going to a slightly less, lofty height, whatever, there are other things I think to think about of like, so it's not just be, individual thing, right? So I think let's, look at, say some people say there's collective guilt, like, oh, Jamie, you're a man, you're white, right? So your people, your group are responsible for all the oppression of women through time, burning all the witches, all the rape of all these innocent people through time, domination of people who didn't get to live their lives. They had dreams and those dreams were squashed for no good reason, just because men didn't want them to have it or white people didn't want other people to have it. And there's an enormous amount of pain, and the descendants of these people still feel the pain, or people who are in that group. There's like that memory of the injustice, and a wish to have it resolved, and acknowledged. And I definitely do acknowledge, and I think we should all heartily acknowledge the pain and the tragedy of say women, the way women have been treated over the last few thousand years of history. Many women have been treated very well, but there's definitely been, compared to men, women's position in society has, in general, diminished in many places quite radically since the times of hunter-gatherers. Now, in other places, it's been resurgent. Like in the West, it's more or less, I would say, it's pretty damn equal now, and even, you might say, unequal towards men in some situations. But nonetheless, like, the point is, first step, like, acknowledge all the tragedy of that. And, you read a good book or you watch a good movie where, the things that have been done to women, and it's really terrible. It should break your heart, And so that's something to acknowledge, and not just skip ahead to, but no, acknowledge that, and acknowledge the white supremacy and that kind of stuff, and all the terrible stuff of slavery in the United States and etc. But then the thing it's saying that do I feel guilty because of that? Do I feel like I'm responsible? I feel that we're all responsible to do our best, and so to take responsibility of it. I think there's an opportunity for all of us, and actually I would say an obligation for us all to take responsibility, black, white, men, women. But more men have more of a responsibility because partly there are the patterns of thinking which created those imbalances and atrocities in the past. They continue in some way, to some extent, and so I think if we're honest, you admit that you have, say me, I have noticed thoughts pop through my head sometimes in life where I'm like, oh, that's kind of like not such a healthy thought. That's kind of like a prejudicial thought. And it seems like that's an echo of some past thing, which, was coming down through my lineage, whether it's like, pretty small things, but it would be where like I would go, oh, that's not me. That's like, which is an important thing to say. You are not your mind. Your mind is like your secretary. The CEO is consciousness, and they're not the same thing. Some people like Buddhists sometimes might use mind to mean like, not just the thinking mind, but like consciousness in general. And that's kind of a beautiful word for consciousness, mind, in a way. But I think the better way to think of it is like your psyche, your mind, the thinking, that's not you. You are this awareness, this consciousness behind the mind. And you can control the mind, you can use the mind, you can express yourself through it, but ultimately you can meditate and the mind disappears and you are still here. And your mind changes over time, your body changes. So if there's a stable sense of self, it can't be the mind. And it isn't. It's the consciousness. It's that which is always there, which is you, the presence, the witness, the invisible witness with the three-dimensional canvas upon which the masterpiece of creation is being painted one moment at a time. So I think probably a lot of us could admit, like, especially as you get more conscious and you start noticing, oh, that's all nonsense, let's move away from that. Sometimes it can be distressing to notice some of these kind of more like primal, less reasonable thoughts pop into your head. And some people would pretend they're not there. Other people would maybe go, oh my God, I'm terrible, and go the other way, like, oh, I'm a monster. And maybe allow people to, send them to re-education camps and go, oh yeah, you're a racist. Yeah, I'm a racist. If you're an actual racist, I don't think you would be agreeing to these things. But nonetheless, so we have a responsibility to address these patterns, which are continuing through time to some extent. In the West, it's been improved a lot. I think there's been huge amounts of progress made with racism. Almost everybody condemns racism. Almost everybody condemns sexism these days. And the fact that you can get in such big trouble about it just shows that. If this was a thoroughly racist society or sexist society, you wouldn't be losing your job for, making inappropriate tweets or whatever, But the fact that it is means, look, that's definitely, that society has changed enormously. And that's good. But the danger is that it goes too far. And so before we address that, the balance, what it means, just to finish this idea of collective guilt. So people, for one thing, that even if I were the descendant of slavers, right, which I'm not, I would not be responsible by guilt. I wasn't there. It wasn't me. So what's actually happening is you're mistaking who I am. If you say that, if you make that claim, you're saying you are your group, but I'm not my group. I am, in a way I am, I guess, I'm a branch on the tree. So I'm the tree. I'm that group through time. But I am this branch here. This branch didn't cause whatever happened before, and I was not there. That was not my free will. I didn't make those choices. You could even say that wasn't their free will either, because they were spiritually unconscious. That's another conversation. But I still think you need to be held accountable for your actions, especially if they're free willing. But nonetheless, we need deterrence and we need feedback to prevent, to make sure people act according as they should. So there should be some punishment, even if people weren't fully spiritually awake. But I am here, and so I don't think it does anyone good to be bringing up the past and saying, oh yeah, you're, white people 300 years ago did something, therefore you are guilty too. Because it's like, well, none of us were there. For all we know, I was black 300 years ago and you were white. If you're a black person who might be say, posing that argument to me, right? For all, I think reincarnation is probably real. I don't know, but probably that's my sense. And so potentially, that could be the way it is. Wouldn't that be funny? Now, and so I don't think the cult of collective guilt is useful. And I think, guilt is not really a positive emotion to be building the new world from. We should be building it from hope, creativity, kindness, love, joy, wisdom, excitement, guilt isn't really, do we really want to be sowing that? I don't think so. Maybe some people at a low level of consciousness, that would be an improvement to start feeling guilty, definitely. People who are just, nope, doesn't matter, just do it, whatever, suck it up. Them feeling guilty would be an improvement, but I think, it's a temporary stage. The ultimate healing state is not guilt. It is self-forgiveness and forgiveness of others. Very important. But because forgiveness isn't an awareness that there was guilt, but it should transcend that and say it's okay, and we're gonna build a new, better relationship, better situation. Now, and just another little detail there, right? So even if I was descended from slavers, I wouldn't feel personally responsible for that because I'm not my group. I'm an individual, right? I'm here now. But also, say me, I'm Irish, descended from Irish stock. My whole family's Irish. We're genocided by omission by the British Empire, not that long ago. My grandma, she remembers being very young and being in the same room as an elegant old lady in a dark dress who was her great-grandmother. And she had been born immediately after the famine, the Great Famine. And so she grew up in the post-famine world, feeling all the effects of all that, turmoil and all that tragedy, the aftermath of that. And she was in the same room as my grandma, who I've been in the same room with. And she was telling me this firsthand memory. So, this isn't that long ago. And this caused enormous, look, if you want to learn about it, get ready. Just the 800 years of British imperialism, pretty heinous, pretty intense stuff. I won't go into detail, but I'm actually on the receiving end of colonialism, but I'm white, so people might think, oh, you're a colonial bastard. It's like, I wouldn't get angry at them. I would just have to forgive them for their lack of understanding and go, all right, well, I might feel that anger come up. Hey, you don't understand. Then I go, okay, is that very useful? And so this is like that consciousness thing. You feel these primal emotions come up. And then to go, okay, look, this isn't personal. This is just, they've got unconsciousness coming up in them. I've got unconsciousness coming up in me now in response. I can take responsibility for this situation, and I can forgive and just accept and let go of and not identify with this negative emotion and this conflictive energy and disposition, and I can heal that and dissolve it, and then the other person has nowhere to go, because if you're looking at them, they kind of accuse you of something, and yet they can see you haven't severed your cord of affection with them. That does something to you, and it's good. It does something good, I think. And that's how we start healing the world. Hate, what's the thing? Hatred never combats hatred. Only love can do that. The Buddha, I think. And that, on a practical level, that's how it works, The buck stops here. Instead of reacting like pinballs bouncing around of unconscious reactions, something comes your way and it's unreasonable, you don't deserve it, and you embrace it. Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you, universe, for giving me this opportunity to dissolve the momentum of trauma and injustice. And you don't need to tell anyone about it. Better if you don't, so you don't start thinking, oh, I'm so cool, look at me, I'm the guy who is helping save the world or whatever. A little bit of that's good if, keep you balanced, maybe. But like very little. In general, you don't want to be inflating your ego with this self-importance of what you're up to. But so collective guilt, I think, it doesn't really make sense. And often people will, you might not be understanding the full picture. Or even like, a lot of African Americans descended from slaves, a bunch of them aren't as well. Some of them could be descended from slavers in Africa who were enslaving, the slave trade, the source of it was Africans enslaving other Africans and selling them to the Europeans. At that time in history, the Europeans weren't going inland. They had ports on the coast, like kind of West Africa and Ivory Coast, that kind of place, and they would just buy the Africans from other Africans. So it's complicated. It's not as simple as white people enslaving black people, And slavery was common all around the world. White people were enslaving white people, Asians were enslaving Asians, everyone, all over the place, right? So it's a complicated picture, and I think it doesn't do us much good to get lost in that, So I think it's much better to just live in the now, and when injustice comes your way, to try to, set boundaries as you should, but to, and not let people walk all over you or walk over others. If someone's mistreating women, say, hey buddy, what are you doing? Are you crazy? Are you 5 years old? That's no way to act. What are you doing? If they start getting intense, go, all right, look, we don't want trouble. No need to fight them, but you can push them, make them slightly uncomfortable there, make them notice, hey, that's not on. That's not the world we're living in, right? And so just through brave conversation, I think you can help a lot of these things. And not just choosing easy targets and being like, oh yeah, these people, on Twitter, I'm going to attack people and they can't do anything to me. Or like, oh, my society's trying its best to, treat women well. And, in general, like the pay things equal these days. I'll mention it's actually more basically equal in the West. But instead of like attacking people in the West or whatever, go, why don't I go take a holiday to some other country where maybe women aren't treated so well and try to raise awareness there where it's really needed, and women are getting stoned for adultery and stuff, Again, I love everyone, we're all brothers and sisters. That's me living another life over there. Unfortunately, it's even me casting the stone. It's you casting the stone, the way I see it. We're all humanity living, in all these different circumstances. You might see it differently, but I would say, if you were in that conditioning, you had that upbringing, that brain, etc., you would be doing perhaps the same thing. But like, so not just taking these easy targets and to make ourselves feel good, like, oh, virtue signaling, look at me, how cool I am, and attack people on Twitter when they're defenseless, but to try to, just be cool, but, not get too caught up and obsessed with the whole thing of prejudice and racism and sexism and whatever, but to just be a balanced person, treat everyone equally, treat everyone fairly, and if you really want to make a difference, go and, face to face, go try and help people or talk to people, raise awareness, or when it comes up, in life, then just to kind of, connect in the real world, and that's where it can make the most impact. And you don't want to be, even then, you don't want to be alienating people, I think, and being like, how could you say that, you monster? But instead going, imagine that I am that person, and we've temporarily had our souls swapped, and suddenly, like, imagine, okay, here I am, I'm talking to some other guy there, and he says something about, oh, bloody, whatever, some group, and he's like, just like filthy scum, whatever. So to deal with that, I think a great way to imagine suddenly my soul is swapped, and now I'm in that other person's body, and that other person is in my body, looking back at me. What would I want them to say to me to try to bring me to my senses? I wouldn't want them to go, you monster. I don't want to be called a monster, So they could go, man, you've got to be honest, I think you're pretty far off the mark there. Like, we're all brothers and sisters in my eyes. Like, I mean, there's a few bad apples in every bunch, but it's got nothing to do with race or sex or whatever. So, I mean, do you really believe that, or are you just messing around? Then I go, oh, I'm just messing. Yeah, I thought so, they say to me. And I go, yeah, cool. Oof, that was a close one. And you give people the grace and the opportunity to try to stay connected with us and not get lost in, little echo chambers of extremism or something. Excuse me. So, yeah, tricky conversation, lots of little details here, but basically, yeah, I think real world connection and trying to maintain empathy for others and respect for others, even those who are being disrespectful and lacking empathy, especially those people. That's where it's needed most. So, yeah, and now, the pay gap thing, by the way, little side note, sometimes you might hear people say, I think even Obama said this, which was like, well, I mean, he did a few things. Maybe that shouldn't be too surprising. But people say sometimes, oh, yeah, men are paid more than women. It's outrageous. We need to fix the gender pay gap. Actually, that doesn't happen anymore. That would be discrimination. We have laws against that, so it's not allowed. What that comes from is, in general, men are paid more because men are overall on average. In the West, this is, right? I don't know. Some other countries probably, unfortunately, yeah, women are paid worse, say in certain countries where they're treated as second-class citizens, unfortunately, But in the West, right, the way it is, men are dangerous jobs, like where you could get your hand chopped off, that kind of thing. Men are much more likely to do those jobs. Moving city, moving your home, just packing up and moving, cutting off all your social contacts to go pursue a job. Men are more willing to do that in general. And also, men are less likely to stop working to start, to take care of children. And then there's, I think, certain very high-paying jobs, I think, we're relating to, like, high-level problem solving or whatever. It seems like, I think there might be an element too, I'm not sure, where men are more drawn to that, because in general, not always, there's exceptions, men are more interested in things and women are more interested in people. So it's not necessarily even about ability, or there might be something to that, but just that, men are more interested in, like, in general on, okay, how do we make this bridge? Whereas women would be more interested in how do we raise these children, or how do we help this elderly person regain mobility and have a good quality of life. It's like, what is interesting to you, you know? And that might be a factor as well. But even without that, you know, so that is the thing why that comes about. But in general, you know, basically, if someone's making a bridge, it doesn't matter if you're male or female, you're getting the same pay. So, yeah. So let's see, what else have we got to say here on the topic? Well, one thing I'll say before I go checking these notes, feminism. So, like, I think, so I mentioned, like, there's the danger of a backlash if people go too far, right? So feminism was the people, if someone said, are you a feminist, Jamie? I wouldn't label myself, right? But I would be pretty reticent to say that because they might get the wrong idea. Because it seems like these days that some people have different versions of feminism. If it's like Christina Hoff Sommers, her version of feminism, I think I would agree with. I could say, yeah, I'm a feminist in that sense. I believe in equality. I believe we're all equal. We have different abilities. I have different abilities to my twin brother even, you know. But every person has different abilities. And in general, like, men have certain different abilities to women in general. You know, that women are better than men at some things, men are better than women at other things in general, but there's always exceptions. And, you know, even whatever, different groups, different cultural groups might have different ways of raising children. So that could create, you know, different advantages or disadvantages. So we have these differences. And so that needs to be acknowledged. Like, oh, who's going to be better at this job? Okay, well, if it's a soldier, probably going to be men, because men are more able in general to shut off emotions. And also, you know, like, kind of logical problem solving tends to be more the milieu of men. And that's traditionally been the way through evolution, what men have been focusing on more. Whereas women in general have been more about social awareness, emotional intelligence, and sustaining the group and maintaining kind of the flow of communal affection and kind of keeping everything, I don't know, alive. And, you know, like, I don't know, this is out of my, you know, beyond my pay grade to explain, but you get the idea, right? And that kind of resonates, right? It's like, oh yeah, that's kind of the way it is in general, right? And this is backed up by scientific studies anyway, but so in general, yeah, men are going to be a better soldier. Women in general, better maybe nurses, teachers, or whatever, more maybe empathetic and kind in general, probably. But that doesn't mean, you know, so we're not equal in terms of abilities, but we are equal in terms of worth at a fundamental level. So we're not equal in terms of worth in terms, okay, who's going to be in the army, or who's going to be building this bridge, or who's going to be teaching the people, or whatever. There could be a thing, oh, well, only 10% of engineers are women, or whatever. That wouldn't shock me, because in general, women are less interested in building things. There's only 10% of men in primary school teaching. Okay, that doesn't shock me, really, because it seems like in general, women are more drawn to that. And so if you don't know that, you might get the wrong idea. Oh my God, there's some systemic sexism. But it's like, well, it's not that simple. But nonetheless, so whoever's good at doing stuff, I say, yeah, we should. It's a healthy society requires that we, you know, things are hard to run. We need the best people doing everything, you know. And the good thing is there's an unlimited number of games. So if you're not good at this thing or that thing, there's something you're going to be really good at. You just need to find it. And so if we say, no, everyone's equal, that's actually robbing you of the opportunity to find what you're actually gangster at, you know? So I think that's a situation where truth is very important. You can't, like, honeycode it and lie to ourselves and say, oh, everyone's equal at everything. Bullshit. You know, it's not the way it is. Everyone knows it deep down. It doesn't feel good to lie to ourselves like that, and it's not wise. Truth is necessary. So, but yeah, everyone can be the best at something, you know, you just need to find it. For one thing, everyone's the best at being them, you know. Answer, you know, a questionnaire about what you would do in this situation. No one can do it as well as you can. You've got privileged access to that awareness. But and skills. Everyone, I'm sure, has certain skills which they can be really good at. Just need to find it. But nonetheless, at a deep level, we're all equal. We're all, we're all spirit. We're all the consciousness. We're all souls. We're all just the universe experiencing itself. So I think the idea of thinking that anyone is better than anyone, that whether it's for class, or you've got $1 billion and your great 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 granddad also had way more money than everyone else. Does that make you better than me? No, it doesn't. It means you've got more money than me. It means you can do more things than me in the outer world. Doesn't necessarily mean you can think as clearly as me. Doesn't necessarily mean you can sing as well as me. Doesn't, there's other things. There's many abilities I might be able to trump that person at. But even that, it doesn't really matter. It's all, we're both souls, that's it. That's the way I would see it. And I think that's the healthy way to see it. Is like, you can celebrate, like, yeah, good for you, being some gangster, like, billionaire. Have fun. I hope you're having fun over there and living your best life, because you're me. If I were in that situation, and actually I am, in a sense, through you, I would hope I would have the most fun I can while being a good person. And that's what I'm doing over here. And me, compared to some, dude in, a slum in India, I am that billionaire gangster dude, So it's just kind of relative to an extent, And so, ultimately we're equal, but we are different in another sense. But sometimes, yeah, people take it too far. They get lost in tribalism and kind of, instead of seeing yourself as like, okay, I am me, I'm a branch on the tree of life. I happen to be white. I happen to be, of Irish descent. I happen to be male. I happen to, I don't know, have leaned to libertarian or classical liberal political philosophy. I kind of feel, I'm inclined toward Buddhism and, that kind of Zen, non-duality philosophy kind of stuff. Whatever, I'm a musician or whatever. These are all like little tags or like labels, but it's not you, You're none of this. You're just, there's no words for who you are. You're just you. You want to know who you are? Turn off the mind and just be in the now. And that's who you are. Get to know yourself. But it's very tempting to have this tribal, these tribal instincts are very potent because that was necessary for us to get to this stage of evolution, I suppose, where we define ourselves as a group. And, that we needed the group because we're very vulnerable on our own, or in the wild we are. Now we can have the benefits of our individuality because we've built this safety net of society via coordinated group actions. And it turns out that the optimized group is one which maximizes individual freedom. And that's what the West is, That's why the West flourished so much, I believe. Apart from having superior naval technology and kind of conquering the world, many people were doing that. But I think what really sustained it and allowed that to last and entrench, and, the empires that first took over, they didn't last that long, So, Portuguese and Spanish empires. What really, I think, allowed the West to really become very powerful is like the maximizing freedom. Anyway, so we are not your tribal group, but it's very tempting to go, oh, I'm Republican, I'm Democrat, or whatever it is. I'm pro-vax, anti-vax, pro-life, anti-life, whatever. But I don't know, it just seems like a kind of waste of time to to define yourself as part of this group. Why not just, who needs a boundary? Why can't we all be just each other? Why can't we all be part of one big thing, And I think that's much more enjoyable. If you try it out, people who you feel like they're not part of my group, run a little experiment and go, all right, next time I'm seeing one of them, imagine that we're actually part of the same group, and we're all kind of, or do a little daydream where you are in that group and have a little life and try to think of a cool way. What would be a cool way to be you're some guy from North Europe and you got some problems with immigration or something. There's North African hoodlums in the neighborhood or something. Go, okay, imagine I'm part of some North African family. What would be me, my best self, if I'm born into that community? And you kind of imagine this North African dude, just, really educated, kind, helping out the community, whatever. You're like, yeah, that's what I would do if I were there. And you can start to see that in these people. And so instead of being, oh, these people are not part of me, you can go, no, yeah, actually, we're all kind of not so different. I think movies and books are really good for building empathy and helping. I think far better than, shouting and, trying to belittle people and shame people for their, genuine beliefs about, who is and is not part of them and who is and is not worthy, is like movies and books where you'll have just these lessons just kind of showing, like the beauty of different cultures, where, like that Clint Eastwood movie, what's Gran Torino, where he's like, this old Korean War veteran, and then his neighborhood's, gradually he's like, 90 or something, and his neighborhood slowly over the decades been overrun, whatever, with like Koreans, and it's like they're the huge Korean community, and he's just surrounded by them, and so he just feels so out of place because he was out, traumatized, shell shocked in Korea, fighting, Koreans, and so he's kind of like real hostile to them. But over time, he kind of gets to know them, and he starts to like them, and then in the end, he even defends them. Great movie, but and it's just such a beautiful thing, showing. It's like an archetype or a model, a blueprint for what we can do in our own lives. Of something seems foreign and weird and to us, and we don't quite like it, triggers fear or disgust or anger. Don't like it, and then being able to approach that and even learn to accept it, and then even embrace it and kind of welcome it and celebrate it. And it's a really beautiful thing. It's like so much untapped potential in this world. All the people who are hating on other groups, like, you have the ability to love that group. And that is far more enjoyable than hating them, And the thing you think you're holding on to and preserving by hating them, it's an illusion, Like the real inheritance, the real treasure is just, living in harmony with your fellow man, man in the uncountable plural sense, well, not really plural, but, you know what I mean, in general. Humanity. So, but yeah, so let's say, getting back to going out of balance, right? Like, people might say, you can't be racist against white people. You can't be sexist against men, because it seems like some people want to make people pay for, like, oh, you hurt us for so long, you need to suffer for a while now. Haha, your turn. But the energy, that's not the right energy, Like, that's not a healthy energy. That's just going to create more of that energy, right? And it's going to cause a backlash, and then, especially, and it's kind of crazy if you're doing that and you're in the minority, and you're like say with, women against men or whatever, that's one thing. But if you're like an ethnic minority, say you're black people in the USA, it's not the majority, and if you're being like, oh yeah, just white motherfuckers, like, that's kind of crazy, because it's really risky that, the majority it seems like, whether there's a silent majority of the majority who were kind of not really into it, but just went with it during, all the terrible days of the KKK and all that, who knows? But the majority was at least tacitly supporting institutionalized racism for a long time. So now we have this opportunity for, like, where the majority is saying, yeah, we want, equality. And so you don't want to be, like, going too far. That's really crazy. And in fact, not just counterproductive, but actually that's a betrayal of the cause. So if someone says, I'm an anti-racist, therefore I hate white people, it's like, you are your own enemy, and you are the enemy of anyone who is trying to bring equality to the planet. And you are snake in the grass, because it's all about equality. It doesn't matter, like, there's no time for, or let's punish you because you or someone else who looks like you in the past was doing that to someone who looked like me in the past. That's actually a continuation of the divisive us against them thought pattern. So you might think, oh, it's different though, because I'm a woman, you're a man. Yeah, but that's like, it's the same pattern. It's us against them. That's the relevant thing. It's not, is it, because, think about it. What makes sexism bad, or racism bad, or homophobia bad, or classism bad? It's all the same thing. It's this us against their mentality and treating people unreasonably, punishing people when they've done nothing wrong, right? That is the thing, and that's common among all of them. So it doesn't matter if it's a woman doing it to a man or a man to a woman. Or would it be fine if the women had been punishing men for throughout history, and then suddenly the men turned around and started go to the kitchen, woman, and no, of course not. That would be wrong, right? So why is it right the other way around? It's not right. You can be racist against white people, and it happens all around the world. You can be racist against black people, and it happens all around the world, right? It's all just about treating people as individuals, and not punishing them for something they haven't done, and punishing them for something that they are, for being who they are. So I think, unfortunately, it almost seems like the virus of prejudice, in the spotlight of awareness that has been shone on it in the West in recent decades, it has had to retreat because it's been under attack, and the spotlight, it's put in the spotlight, and that, sunlight is the best disinfectant, right? That itself basically deals with it. You just need awareness. You don't really need to do anything else. Awareness, and then the changes roll into place. Once everyone understands fully, then actions follow pretty naturally. And so that's why movies and books are so powerful, and even music, or like that Bob Dylan song. All right, here we go, Little Dylan, right? Which communicate like the truth of like, boom, boost your awareness of something, and they don't need to tell you what to do, because you understand, and naturally you'll do what's right. And so, yeah, I think with racism or sexism or whatever, we really don't want to be continuing the energy of like punishing people, or supremacy, of like, oh yeah, we should be helping, like say boys are struggling in schools in America. There's a great, Christina Hoff Sommers wrote this book called The War on Boys, or The War Against Boys, and talking about how the way the school system has been set up kind of favors girls, and that the boys, like say, who have more of a need for running around and, playing guns like playing with guns, pretending to be warriors or whatever, which maybe later on they will embody in later life as like being a warrior, like in a more, not with guns, but like say with words, and doing the right thing and fighting for freedom and for the justice and being a good, father or whatever, or friend or whatever it is. They're acting that out in this primordial male kind of way, and being told, hey, oh my God, Jimmy he was playing guns with George. Oh my God, he's a bad boy. There's all these, that's a tiny little thing, but there's all these details of how boys have been struggling, I believe in the West in general, in the schooling system, and that how women have been, and girls, and then women have been succeeding, outpacing boys massively, which is great for women. Like, it's like, yes, amazing success for, for that half of the population. So that's wonderful. But that when people have been raising the alarm, including people like Christina Hoff Sommers, who's a feminist, saying like, we need to take care of our boys. These are our brothers, our husbands, our, fathers, our sons. Some people have been going, well, hey, that's anti, progressive. And so you start seeing this danger where people can start trying to put women above men. And that's very tempting, perhaps, if you're feeling like you're, making a lot of progress. Yeah, why don't we, don't overreach, It's very important to be balanced, or lest you gain a backlash, And then if there's a backlash, it can escalate very quickly. And a lot of people in the middle ground, who would be very swayable by calm, reasonable voices, their primal emotions are triggered, and there's a lot of people who won't have enough consciousness to remain aware of what actually makes sense, and they will just get swept up in the currents of primordial energy. So it's very important that, we build upon the gains of our predecessors, and don't throw away, like all the gains of Emmeline Pankhurst, or these amazing heroes, who were like helping women come from like servitude, and absolute, second-class citizenship, literally being unable to vote, and said, oh, women are too crazy to vote or whatever, to having these rights. And then by going, oh yeah, for women, we're going to keep doing this for women, yeah. And it's like, no, for your bloody ego is what you're doing, and you're actually, absolutely betraying these women from before if you were to do that, and maybe I should be being less blunt with this, but basically, I think there is, and we can all be guilty of it to some extent, of being not quite finding the balance, being a bit too extreme with things. So it's always one of the best questions ever is when you see something that you don't like, ask, instead of just going, that's not good. Okay, I noticed that I don't like it. So I can communicate that to the person. That's one option. Or I can try to stop it, take some action if that's appropriate. But often, or I could just accept it, right? If it's not appropriate or I can't do anything, right? You just accept it, and that's actually what, because you're cultivating your own peace and therefore clear consciousness. So that's actually a good thing to do. It helps alleviate prejudice in the future just by not getting and simmering in negative emotions, but remaining calm. But a great thing you can do is to go, when you see something like that, ask yourself, in what way am I doing the same thing? And there might be, well, no way really that I can think of. But if you keep thinking, you might notice something that's not very similar, but kind of vaguely similar, and you go, right. And so that both connects you to that other person more, to kind of mitigating that us against them psychology, but also it's very practical. You go, oh yeah, I do need to work on that. I forgot about that. There's a lot to keep in mind, So other people displaying their flaws can be a great gift to us to kind of help us go, okay, in what way am I doing the same thing? Oh yeah, I sometimes do that thing. Yeah, okay. Nice. And so we can kind of put it to good use, So yes, I would say that's important, like this, I'd say in a nutshell, 3 things, right? Be conscious. That's the way to heal old problems. Be conscious. Wake up, people. And 2, take responsibility for the imbalances and injustices perpetrated by people whose group you are in now. Even if you're not directly responsible for it, do what you can to try to build bridges. If only, among other reasons, but because many people will hold you guilty of that. So say, because I'm a man, certain extreme feminists might hold me guilty for the history of women being, say, second-class citizens. But so I wouldn't agree with that, like that I'm responsible for that, but I can still, by me intentionally going, okay, that's something that I have an opportunity. They will be paying attention to people like me more than to other people, say to other women or whatever, about that perhaps. So if I can take action to help that, that's one reason to do it, is that they will see that as, men are actually trying to fix the problem. And a lot of men are, I think a huge number of men are very concerned to try to alleviate all the prejudice and to dissolve the trauma of this, to help women be their best selves going forward. But often men don't exactly know what to do, Someone was just telling me, shout out to Alex, the barista. He was telling me, a friend of mine saying, he was asking a friend of his, what can we do? What can we do? And that, she didn't really have much to say, that it was kind of hard to articulate what exactly can you do practically, Some people say if it's late at night and you're walking along the street, and there's a woman coming, you should cross the street so that she doesn't have to worry about, oh my God, is this guy going to be a threat to me? But then maybe some people will like that, but then maybe certain other women won't like it, and they'll go, oh, this guy thinks I'm so weak that I need that, huh? Or maybe some women will be totally fine, and maybe the black belt's in jiu-jitsu. And so, and you can just, and in general, say me, I don't like doing that because I like to create, I like to live in peace and love. And so what I would do instead was I might put on, maybe exaggerate, or just consciously cultivate a smile, or just be whistling to myself, something to emanate a vibration of beauty and kindness. But even that, do you need to do that? Some people might think, well, if it doesn't matter, we're all just the same, right? We're just equal. We shouldn't be getting lost in this and obsessed with race and gender and all this. Why can't we just walk past each other just like normal human beings as if we were both male? But then people say, yeah, but it's not. There's all this trauma, and people, people do get raped still, and there's all this trauma. And so women, it's different. We need to be careful. And if you would just cross the road, what's the big deal? Why didn't you do it? So it can be very complicated. People go, maybe, like, it's not, even people who want to do the right thing, it's not clear what they should do. Or say, women in, some Muslim country want to wear hijabs or whatever. Like, some people think, oh, isn't that kind of like men dominating them? Should I be criticizing that? But then again, it's just their culture. So maybe they want to do it. It's not really clear what the right thing to do is. So this is where I think for me, it comes back to, like, just be conscious, do the best you can, and take responsibility for what you can, and try to be a good emissary of, the change you want that world to see. But also the third thing would be, don't acquiesce to this idea of collective guilt, because I don't think that's healthy. And, bowing down, I'm really sorry for what I did. What did you do? Oh, I enslaved the Africans. No, you didn't. What are you talking about? You're perverting yourself from truth. So, and that's a little momentum you don't want to set in order, because it's very precious, the awareness of truth. And all the time we lose sight of what's true. So you need to be very careful not to lie to yourself, even if it seems like it's a kindness or something. So, yeah. Now, a little bit, let's see. Who's very unorthodox, going to answer a phone call. Hello. It is indeed. No problem. All good. Base is done. Wonderful. I'll collect it later today. Cheers, mate. See ya. Bye. That was Chris from Music Minds. Anyone in Dublin, Music Minds, solid people. My bass is ready. So I think that is God trying to tell me to play a tiny bit of Bob Dylan. All right. This is a little bit from a song called Only a Pawn in Their Game. So on the theme of racism, right? Here we go. Just a little 30 seconds. A bullet from the back of the bush took Medgar Evers' blood, and a finger for the trigger to his name. A handle hit out in the dark, 2 eyes hit the spark, 2 eyes took the aim. Behind a man's brain, but he can't be blamed, he's only a pawn in their game. About a white dude who shot a black guy, and Dylan saying, yeah, but he's only a pawn in their game, don't blame him, It's like he's being used by other people, by, the politicians who want to keep the poor white people distracted, So it's, the southern politician preaches to the poor white man. You got more than the blacks, don't complain. You're better than them, you've been born with white skin, he explains. And ain't it plain, the Negro's name is used for the politician's gain. So the poor white man remains on the caboose of the train, so he can't be blamed, he's only a pawn in their game. Etc. Great song. Believe it or not. But some people might say, oh my God, that, how can you forgive him for that? But it's like, this is art, so beautiful. It just shows that, there's layers to these things, but that this person is lost in an ideology and being manipulated for various reasons, but to see deeper than just the surface thing of, oh, racist bad, or whatever, and to go, okay, often people are kind of possessed by these mind viruses, and that is you living another life, and that we should have pity, really. I think, what's that thing like Dumbledore says to Harry? Don't pity don't pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living, and above all, those who live without love. And so I think racists, sexists, homophobes, classists, whatever it is, I wouldn't want to be living that life, would you? So doesn't that therefore mean that they are suffering and they are being punished in a way, even if it's by themselves or by their lineage, their upbringing, and where they are from in life? And so we can still set appropriate boundaries and take action against the negative influences that certain people can create in the world, protect vulnerable people, try to prevent institutions from getting corrupted, etc. But at the same time, have compassion for our brothers and sisters who are lost from love and lost from common sense of just in a prison of bad ideas. And I think that really does help. The energy of compassion and love is really, I think, the only way prejudice really is undone, apart from also alleviating poverty, because a lot of this stuff comes from people who don't have enough and they get into these fearful survival mode, sympathetic nervous system kind of states of fight or flight, and then it's easy to blame the outsiders from your tribe, but then even that, improving poverty, and that also comes from cultivating your own consciousness and peace and wisdom and goodness, and then you're a good role model for others around you, and collectively we start to move in that direction. That has, that is mirrored in the success of the prosperity of the country, I would think, that, people flourishing individually ends up causing the society flourish, and that diminishes poverty, which also diminishes prejudice. So let's look at these mighty notes. Anything that has been missed? Yeah, right. So basically, identity politics and division. So some people use this. Some people are just, say, let's talk about the people who are being out of balance with. They're kind of on the right track. They're saying racism's bad, sexism's bad, etc. And yeah, right on, brother, right on, sister. That is, definitely true. But they're just, the what is right, but the how is wrong. They're going, yeah, so we need to kill all the white people. I thought you were saying racism's bad. Yeah, exactly. So sometimes I think that's ignorance. And so we can try to communicate clearly, take, the kind of, be a good influence, be the change you want to see in the world, show them another way to be addressing racism and prejudice, like more peaceful way, a more balanced way. And, understand that we might be out of balance ourselves sometimes. And so to ask, how am I doing the same thing? And try to have humility and be aware that we all have blind spots, or we might have blind spots and you wouldn't know because it's a blind spot. Ignorance, that's one thing. However, there's also malevolence, which would be people just trying to stir up problems, enjoying conflict. And that could be unconscious, perhaps, people who they feel good when they're fighting. And if they're not fighting, and then life starts to seem a bit slippery, and then they find someone to hate, and suddenly everything's simple again, and they feel calm. That can be a problem. So instead of kind of finding calm through spiritual evolution, people might find it through tribalism and warfare, So that's another problem, right? So people just, kind of using it disingenuously, using these causes basically just to allow themselves to enjoy a good conflict. So that's actually what I was saying before, right? The prejudice, it's like the spotlight of awareness has forced prejudice into a big retreat in the West. But then I think it's snuck its way into certain. It's had to retreat into certain less obvious places, and requiring the spotlight of awareness to increase in intensity and luminosity to kind of notice. And that's what we're doing here, trying to do. Where we have conversations like this. So, for example, the fact that people could be using racism or sort of saying, I'm an anti-racist, but they're actually being racist. Or, oh, I'm a feminist. I'm all about equality. But then they might actually not be about equality. They might be lying, So back in the day, it was pretty obvious. Oh, I don't like women. People would say that and be like, okay, and it was kind of obvious. But then that was no longer acceptable. And so they had to find these more nuanced ways to be prejudiced. And so, I'm not racist, but I just think, these people are less intelligent, It's like, okay, maybe you are racist, And I don't know, maybe, wouldn't rule out the idea that certain races might have different abilities in general. But I think, it's not very helpful to kind of probably mention that too much. But even if it is the case that certain ethnic groups would be in general more have better abilities in any field, I don't think it's been studied very much, probably for ethical reasons. But also, what if you throw in daily exercise, good nutrition, good schools, listening to some spirituality videos on YouTube or whatever every now and then. There's all these factors which can radically alter the picture. So I think really it probably doesn't really have much impact. And so anyway, but then the other thing is, right, so people using it for themselves to make themselves, feel good because they enjoy the conflict. But then there's also and that'd be identity politics. People can use that and saying basically, oh, you are your group and groups are all at war. There's this cultural Marxism thing, where a version of Marxism where it kind of morphed philosophically into saying, okay, society and the world is all about power, but instead of like different classes, the capitalists against the workers or whatever, it's like everyone, there's all these cultural groups and everyone's just after power and there's nothing connecting us, and conflict is inevitable. Very dark worldview, but identity politics kind of partly, it seems, built upon that. But the idea that we're all tribes and you've got your own, as a French black male, divorcee, like these very specific like self-definitions, and then feeling like aligning with those tribes or whatever. It doesn't seem like that's very useful for collective bringing harmony into the world, but it seems like this can be used to divide people. And so perhaps you might say, if you're being a bit conspiratorial or cynical or maybe careful, that maybe certain people in power who don't want the citizenry to get too organized and realize that they're being robbed and taxed way too much, while they go off on, have their money off in tax havens or whatever and invade foreign countries to control the oil or whatever, that maybe let's divide them up into 1,000 different groups by encouraging a culture of, tribalism. That's one problem that could be happening potentially. But also just in general that people could self-organize that way into identity politics. And there's a real danger that if we start identifying as all these separate little tribes, then what holds us together? And, and I think unity is very important. So it's important to address prejudice and to try to help the world become a fairer place. But ultimately, the most important thing is that we remember that we're all one. We're all one big family, and that more important, say me, I could be rattling on about the British Empire or whatever and what they did to, poor old Ireland. But at the end of the day, they're my brothers and sisters. And apart from the fact that I may have been, in a previous incarnation, I may have been freaking, the guy overseeing the genocide, England is beautiful and the English are beautiful and they're human beings, and I can see the beauty of that culture and it fills me with happiness and it increases the wealth of my heart. to be able to be part of that and to celebrate it as part of myself, as part of my human heritage. And so I think, all groups, this is an opportunity we have to open our hearts. And even from a selfish point of view, overcoming prejudice is a great idea. If you want to feel good, you need to get rid of that stuff, So yeah, it's all about ethics, being the best I can be and helping our society in general have a high ethical standard, morality, an ethic or an ideal of progress and self-development toward beauty, goodness, truth. And yeah, in general, pluralism, so a society that respects differences. And hey, whatever you want to do in your own private domain, go for it, knock yourself out. But whenever there's shared spaces where, we're interacting, then there are requirements, that whether it's through social expectation or through law, that, mutual respect is required. And grounding all of this is just spirituality. It's just an awareness of who you are, who we are, and that, love is really shiny and delicious and warm. So, cuddle up to love and, forget the other stuff. All right. So happy weekend, everybody. And may you enjoy your prejudice against prejudice, which perhaps is the final and most important prejudice we can have, the one which eats its own tail and dissolves itself in fireworks of pretty lights and beautiful triumph. Amen. Goodbye for now.